At 3:30 p.m. on February 3rd, 1958, in the quiet town of Seaford, Long Island, Lucille Harriman welcomed her two children into the kitchen after school. Within minutes, chaos erupted. Bottles in different rooms of the house began popping their caps by themselves. Bleach in the basement, starch in the kitchen, shampoo and medicine in the bathroom, holy water in the master bedroom, all with screw caps, possible to open on their own. No one saw the bottles move, but everyone heard them. This was the first day of what would become known as the Popper Poltergeist. And it was only the beginning, because 24 years later, Hollywood's most successful filmmaker would take this true story and turn it into one of the most beloved horror films of all time. But what happened during and after filming was far more disturbing than anything that appeared on screen. The Harriman family was ordinary. James Harriman worked for Air France in New York. Lucille was a nurse. Their children, Lucille 13 and Jimmy 12, got good grades. A white and green ranch-style house at 1648 Redwood Path, built in 1953, conservative neighborhood, tree-lined streets, the last place you would expect anything out of the ordinary. After the first incident, James Harriman tried to find a logical explanation: chemical reaction, excess humidity, but the caps were screw caps. There was no way they could simply explode. 2 days later, it happened again. Same time, 6 bottles. Then again on Friday, and again on Sunday. James began to suspect his son Jimmy, a curious boy, a science fan. He spent an entire weekend watching the boy. On Sunday morning, February 9th, more caps popped. James had not taken his eyes off his son. It was impossible that Jimmy had manipulated anything. Frustrated and frightened, James called the Nassau County Police. Officer James Hughes arrived skeptical, until, in the bathroom of the house, several bottle caps fired in his direction. Detective Joseph Tozzi took over the case. He read Hughes's report with interest, but maintained a veteran cop's skepticism. On February 11th, he began his vigil at the house. That very night, a perfume bottle tipped over by itself in the daughter's bedroom. In the following days, the disturbances concentrated on the holy water bottle in the master bedroom. The cap kept popping off. Once, James ran. When he heard the pop, he found the bottle on the floor. When he picked it up, it was inexplicably hot. On February 15th, the activity took a turn. The children were watching television in the living room with a family cousin when a porcelain statue on the side table began to move and was thrown nearly 3 feet away. The statue hit the floor. It did not break. The Harrimans, devout Catholics, called Father William McLeod of St. William the Abbot Church. He sprinkled holy water in every room. It did not work. The Popper, as the press named the poltergeist, did not want to leave. Within 2 weeks, the story leaked. Newspapers, radio, television, Time magazine, Life. The house was surrounded by reporters, photographers, the curious. It was the first televised haunting in American history. Cameras captured objects moving on their own while the nation watched, stunned. Even the Duke University Parapsychology Laboratory, the famous J.B. Rhine, sent researchers. No one found an explanation. In 1982, nearly a quarter century after the events in Seaford, Steven Spielberg had an idea: a horror film about a suburban family tormented by supernatural forces. The Harriman case was on his mind. Spielberg wanted Stephen King to write the screenplay, but King was traveling and missed the deadline. With the script ready and the production of E.T. consuming his time, Spielberg handed directing duties to Tobe Hooper, the man behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But Spielberg remained as producer, visiting the set regularly. Everyone knew who was really in charge. The film premiered on June 4th, 1982. Critical success, box office hit. The story is well known. The Freeling family, Steve, Diane, and their 3 children, live the American dream in a newly built subdivision. Until supernatural forces invade the home, furniture moves on its own. Little Carol Ann is sucked into the television. In the climax, it is revealed that the subdivision was built on a cemetery. The real estate company removed the headstones, but left the bodies. This is where the film's story and reality collide in a macabre way. In the film's most famous scene, Diane Freeling, played by Jo Beth Williams, falls into the backyard pool during a storm. Human skeletons emerge around her. Williams screams, thrashes, tries to get out. The scene is terrifying. During filming, Williams assumed the skeletons were plastic, replicas, as industry protocol dictates. Years later, a crew member casually revealed the truth. The skeletons were real. The production had discovered that buying real human skeletons from a medical supplier was cheaper than manufacturing realistic plastic replicas. A cost-cutting decision. The actors were never told, never consented. JoBeth Williams spent hours submerged, surrounded by real human remains, believing they were props. The irony is almost impossible to ignore. A film about a company that disrespects the dead to save money, produced by a crew that disrespected the dead to save money. And then, the deaths began. Just over 4 months after Poltergeist premiere on October 30th, 1982, Dominique Dunne was rehearsing at her apartment in West Hollywood. She was 22 years old. She had played Donna, the Freeling's eldest daughter. Her ex-boyfriend, John Sweeney, showed up. The two had recently broken up. Dunne wanted distance from an abusive relationship. Sweeney would not accept it. That night, he waited for her outside. When she arrived, he grabbed her by the throat, strangled her at the doorstep of her own home. A friend inside the apartment heard the screams and called the police. Paramedics took Dunne to Cedars-Sinai. For 5 days, she remained on life support. On November 4th, 1982, her parents made the devastating decision to turn off the machines. She was 19 days shy of her 23rd birthday. John Sweeney was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. He served 3.5 years. The franchise continued. Poltergeist 2 went into production in 1985. Julian Beck played Cain, the demonic reverend. Before the film even premiered, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. He died at age 60. He never saw the finished film. Will Sampson, the shaman tailor who faces Cain in the film, fell ill after surgery, kidney failure. He died in June 1987, but no death was as brutal as the next. Heather O'Rourke was only 6 years old when she was cast as Carol Ann, the blue-eyed blonde girl who whispered, "They're here." She grew up on screen. 3 films, the face of the franchise. In January 1988, during the filming of Poltergeist 3, Heather began to feel unwell, her toes and fingers turning blue, shortness of breath. Doctors diagnosed the flu, then Crohn's disease. They were wrong. What Heather had was congenital intestinal stenosis, a severe intestinal obstruction present since birth, but never detected. On January 31st, 1988, she suffered cardiac arrest in the ambulance. She was resuscitated, flown by helicopter to San Diego Children's Hospital. Doctors found the blockage and operated urgently, but it was too late. Septic shock had taken over her body. Heather O'Rourke died on February 1st, 1988, 12 years old, and the list does not end there. 21 years later, on April 1st, 2009, Lou Perryman, who played Pugsley in the first film, was murdered in his own home. An ex-convict named Seth Christopher Tatum attacked him with an axe. Perryman was 67 years old. 4 cast members dead, a 12-year-old child, a 22-year-old young woman, 2 actors from the second film. An axe attack. Tragic coincidences? Or is there something darker about a production that used real human bones as props and never told its actors? In 1958, in a modest house in Long Island, bottles began popping open by themselves, and no one ever explained why. In 1982, Hollywood turned that story into a horror classic, using real human skeletons to save money. And in the 6 years that followed, 4 people connected to the film met premature, brutal, and in some cases violent deaths. The Harrimans eventually left Seaford. The house on Redwood Path is still there. No phenomena have been reported since they moved out. But in Hollywood, what happened on the set of Poltergeist remains one of the most disturbing stories in cinema history, not because of what appears on screen, but because of what happened when the cameras went dark.